How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today I have got a very special guest for you all. She's a powerlifting legend, she's a coach, she's an all-around cool person. Today I am joined by the one and only Isabella von Weissenberg. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. What a nice introduction. Thank
No,
you.
no, no worries at all. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. How are you? What's been happening in your world recently?
Yeah, I'm good. Life is kind of just trudging on over here. I'm living in Sydney and I am training for a competition. I'm working in marketing at the moment, coaching very sparingly, still a little bit for fun.
Yeah,
Um, but mostly focusing on my job as a marketer.
yeah. All right, cool. And I know, obviously, I did a brief introduction there, but for everyone listening who might not know your background in training, in lifting, competing, as well as the coaching that you've done as well, just want to give a bit of a background to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. My powerlifting journey started 2013. That's when I started lifting. And then I became an international competitor around 2015 when I did my first worlds. And I represented Sweden for another four world championships. Broke a number of world records during that period. Started coaching 7 years ago. Worked for 2, 3 years for reactive training systems, and then launched my own coaching business in 2019. Worked quite a lot as a personal trainer in the gym as well here in Australia, and done heaps of online coaching. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
All
brief
right.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. And how do you find? And obviously you mentioned coaching for fun now. How are you finding that balance now between working and trying to do a little bit of coaching?
Mm. Coaching is one of those things that it's genuinely so rewarding, as I'm sure you know. Like it's amazing to get all of these stories from people, hear them, talk about their lives and see their journeys and like get closer to their goals. And you get to know everyone so personally. So it's like, yeah, it's obviously a very rewarding line of work. I find for me personally, it was something that I was never able to do full time. It was mentally exhausting in that way. I think, when you work with people, you give a lot of yourself, a lot of that energy. Obviously, I mean, it's quite taxing if
Yeah,
I suppose if you're a type of person, I know a lot of people who don't struggle. So I guess it's up to who you are and what kind of systems you have in your business. For me, I've always felt like as soon as I reached that full time workload, I just got burnt out all over
yeah,
again. And it was getting to me. I was starting to feel a bit brought down by that. I'm extremely passionate about marketing and social media. So I'm very grateful that I've been able to land a job where I get to do like things that I also love. So
yeah,
it suits me a little bit more to be more introverted, I think.
yeah,
Have a project, double down on like video editing and copywriting and things like that, and then maybe see people like once a week.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so I see clients once a week, which is still
yeah.
very nice. I walk away happy. I don't need to worry about being stressed out by it.
Yeah, and I suppose I think that's really really important because I know I speak about this with clients with members of the gym that there's so many external factors that can cause stress, and the biggest thing is enjoyment. And if you start disliking things or not enjoying it, that only has an impact on not just the training side of things, which yes, if you're competing or anything like that is important, but it can start impacting other things where you start feeling stressed all the time, which isn't very good. Did you find that when you were coaching and your own training that that um that stress from coaching impacted your own training, or have you always kind of kept that quite separate to be able to concentrate on both?
No, actually, it was taking a big hit in that area as well. And I saw three issues with that. One was because I was always in the gym training clients face to face. The sessions were always in my workplace because that's kind of where I spent most of my days. Like you kind of have to push the sessions in between where clients come in, like morning and evening is when people want to have a coach, and then in the middle
Yeah.
you can train. And so that was one issue, like no separation between my hobby and my workplace at all.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is like when you coach, say like 40 people in a training week, and all you talk about is powerlifting. I mean, I love powerlifting, but it just gets exhausting. Like I just eventually stopped caring about it because it was such overload of that same topic on repeat. And I would say thirdly, when I have not so much in off season or in between comps, but when I was, for example, prepping for the World Championships, I just I was an awful coach. Like I just logged off because it's so in the zone. And I'm like, you can't talk to me right now. I'm all about myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a way around it, but I find that that's like probably a pretty natural part of being an athlete. If that's what you
Yeah.
see as your job, is that you are quite like inwards in that sense.
Yeah, that's why I thought I'd ask that question because I think it's quite hard, and I know I'm kind of uh, quite glad that you mentioned that. For me, I've not competed for the last maybe year or two, but I've actually been taking more lifters and clients to competitions just because for me to have or commit to a full block of training to run up. I know in the past I've been right. I need to focus on this because I'm gonna compete. And what really stressed me out at one point was I nearly thought I was going to be competing at the same competition as a client, which I don't think I would have been. I don't think I would have been able to do with that. But yeah, it's exactly right. You've got to focus. You've got to focus on your own training. Um, One thing that you mentioned there about powerlifting as a hobby, and I know from the level that you've competed at, that I've watched you compete at as a powerlifting fan, if you like. Was there a point where, even though you were focusing on your own training, that it either got taken a little bit more seriously and it wasn't thought of as a hobby, or have you always thought it as something that you're doing for fun?
Mm, this is such a good question. It's almost like reality versus fantasy a little bit. Because in my head, I treat it as a job, or I did at least, maybe less now, but let's talk about the years like 2015 to 2020. I definitely saw it like this is my job. I am an athlete.
Yeah.
A job I don't get paid for, so it's a bad choice of line of work, but um, I took it seriously in the same way. And I think that I've always nurtured the dream of being able to be a content creator around powerlifting and generate enough exposure around myself that I get work opportunities, or I can sell out my coaching quite quickly, or if I want to sell coaching programs without necessarily coaching the people who use the programs, I have those opportunities as a result of being an athlete. It's not that it's not it's it's like being a business owner. You have to do accounting, your tax, you have to do your marketing, the coaching. If you have a facility, you need to take care of the facility. So every business has multiple aspects of it, and I guess if you choose to be an athlete in a sport like powerlifting, maybe you can see it that way, like you're a business owner in that sense, and you are the product, and you can find ways to monetize it.
Yeah, I think as well that's an interesting point because I do think as powerlifting has grown in popularity, I think a lot more of the top level athletes are doing that, especially from what I've seen, which makes sense. From that, and I know obviously one key thing that you've said there is treating it like a job, a professional, but there isn't the most amount of money in powerlifting, and that gets spoken quite a lot about athletes that compete at a really good level. How does that work in terms of, treating it like a job, and how kind of consuming is that to be able to balance life and all the other variables that impact that. Because one thing that from speaking to high level footballers and rugby players, they kind of go to the training facility or the pitch and they have everything done, and then they can kind of go away because it's a team environment. Whereas powerlifting, even though you might be training with people, sometimes it's a lot of things that you've got to do yourself. How did you find that?
Hmm. I suppose if you think about the training sessions in themselves, let's say that if we say a high number, maybe 15 hours in the gym, because the sessions are quite long. And then you think about the recovery after. I personally, if I'm training really, really hard for powerlifting, I am a little bit mentally destroyed from it. It's not something that I go and do and then I want to do 5 other things the same day. It does take more energy from me than if I go for an hour run, or if I go play tennis for an hour, I go swim for an hour. I don't get that like mental fogginess from it in the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
In the same way, if I have a serious comp prep and I go to my sessions, I don't just show up and hope that it's going to be a good session. I actually spend a good amount of time preparing mentally to go to train. I don't go downtown to do some shopping first, and then I'll just go to the gym while I'm on my way back. It would just take too much mental focus and clarity away from my goals within that session to combine it with pre-activities. So I think in the whole of it, it just becomes that this is my priority, and that means that other things are going to be of less quality, because I choose to put my energy towards this.
yeah. And key word that I thought there was having that as a priority, and it goes to show from the success that you had that as a clear focus of where you wanted to go. Um, just kind of two follow-up questions from that. Do you think that clear focus and priority is what is uh, needed, I suppose, to get to that top level? And do you think that sometimes, because the entry level to get into powerlifting, anyone can get involved in powerlifting, just need barbell and plates, and obviously learn the movements of squat, bench, and deadlift. Do you think sometimes when people get involved in powerlifting and they want to progress in powerlifting, that they maybe don't understand how much commitment is actually needed to progress further up, further up in the sport? I know there's kind of two questions there. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also a very good question. I've heard people downplay how hard powerlifting is, which makes me a little bit triggered. But it also makes me think that some people probably don't find it as hard, maybe potentially, which is fine and all of that. I think we are different as individuals. We respond to stress and activities differently. I get overwhelmed easily. For me, it's not something I cannot have multiple focuses constantly throughout my week. Other people maybe can. Um, I've noticed when I'm coaching that clients, and this is like over 7 years of coaching, just consistently a red thread is that when people do have a lot going on, their training is usually suffering
Yeah.
in one way or another. Not that they're not able to train or able to make progress, but I noticed that the frustration is there usually around how good it feels and the rate of progress, but more like the feeling around the session. Like the session was scattered, or I couldn't focus, or I just skipped that lift because I couldn't be bothered. Like you hear more of that when people have more going on, whether it's kids or stress with their job, or moving is like one of those huge things. As soon as people move house, everything just like falls apart. So I've noticed it within most people, whether they are entry levels or advanced, and that applies to me. But then I also assume that some people are maybe a bit cooler and evenly keeled, and they can handle more things at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think there's so many variables outside of sessions that can impact it, and impact how you feel, and a lot of things, you know, uh, you can't you can't control. and which will impact that. I know I've had it when I've gone in for training sessions, because to have that focus and not have anything impact you, everything needs to be really controlled outside of the gym, which is hard to stay in control of all the time. In terms of stepping away from powerlifting and changing training around, and how did that kind of impact your thoughts around powerlifting? How did that impact your mindset? And I suppose, did it kind of feel as though it was like a sigh of relief of, oh, I can maybe enjoy training a little bit? Because why I asked that is, from my point of view, I ended up doing different training to what I'd done before. Did a little bit of like strongman, did a little bit of extra fitness, which is like sacrilege in powerlifting, doing extra cardio. But how did that kind of impact your mindset and your approach to training, and how you felt?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm relating to what you're saying. For me, it was quite pivotal, at least for the past 8 months, I guess, just to, or I would say more than that, maybe 12 months, just to completely stepping away. What happened up to that was I felt like I kept trying and then just falling back all the time. Like I was like, okay, now I'm going to do a comp. And then I maybe prepped for 2 out of 6 months and I changed my mind and I didn't want to do it. So I was like halfway in, and I hate being halfway in. Like
Yeah.
that's not a good feeling, especially not with powerlifting. Like we've talked about the focus that's required for it. If you're not even committed to it, it makes it even worse, because they hit me when I did a competition last year just to qualify, and I did the bare minimum. So these would have been like warm-up weights for me. It wasn't hard or anything. The attempts that I did on the platform, maybe like 60% of my max is what I did on the
Yeah.
platform. And I realized that the competition in itself is just as hard, even though I'm lifting easy weights. So
Right.
it's not fun to be there unless you're trying.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, if I'm ever doing this again, I'm going to come back with a better attitude, because this is not worth it for me to spend the hours here, the anxiety of the build up towards the public event and the exposure, and then just not even trying. So I was like, okay, I'm done with that. If I'm not doing it 100%, I'm not doing it. So then I stopped for a while and I started swimming quite a lot, like I mentioned, and I started playing tennis, and then I even did CrossFit for a few weeks,
Yeah.
which was kind of fun. And after about 3 weeks, I was like, no, this is stupid. Powerlifting is better. This is dumb. I don't want to do this. I miss powerlifting. So it was nice to come back actually missing it and being like, no, I love this. I like lifting heavy. That said, I've changed my whole programming and I've changed my attitude as well. So I'm still more on that fitness side, because I think if we come back to that focus, there is still a lot happening in my life, and I think the mental resources are more limited currently than they used to be, say 5 years ago. And I know that my training needs to reflect that now, versus trying and feeling like I'm failing. I'm instead actually changing
Yeah.
things and making them more achievable for myself. So now it feels like a win to do a set of leg press, even though back in the day I thought that wasn't good enough. It has to be RP9 squat. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how did, because you know I'm glad you've mentioned trying other things. I think yeah, I feel a little bit better me trying other things and realizing, yeah, actually I want to go back to do powerlifting, because I do think it is. I chat to we've had a couple of clients and members who have done their first, actually they've done their first powerlifting competitions a couple of months ago, which I thought was really cool, because I say they catch like the powerlifting bug, because it is, especially from me coming from a rugby background, not playing as much rugby, and thinking, right, what something competitive that I can do. It's a completely different environment, but a good environment to be in as a community. but a lot of
Mm.
people, it's a little bit like you mentioning, CrossFit there. People want to identify or, be part of the CrossFit community, the powerlifting community. And how did you kind of find, because obviously you've mentioned there, doing a set of leg press, it sounds as though you're a lot more comfortable and happier in terms of where you're at in terms of, well, yeah, I can get this, I can have this as a win, rather than thinking, oh well, I haven't been able to do X, Y, or Z. How's kind of that impacted your identity, if you like, as like a power lifter, or just like a fitness enthusiast or anything like that, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, good question. I don't know yet. I think I'm still in it. I haven't decided. It's not enough hindsight to be able to say where the shift has been, because I talk about myself as a powerlifter, and my branding is all about powerlifting, and my Instagram is all about powerlifting, but maybe it's more like fitness girly in reality. Like maybe that's what I'm actually doing. Maybe I'm trying to think more, how can this be part of my life for the rest of my life? Like, am I going to be like, when I'm actually 80 years old, what will my body feel like? I seriously doubt that I want to do triples at 9 at that point. Like at some point, I need to face myself out of the thinking of like the intense training sessions. And yeah, kind of lost track of what I was going with there. But
No,
I think my point is, it just feels nicer to not be so intense. And I'm still maintaining my strength. I'm not losing strength. And maybe I've had a wrong, maybe I just thought I had to train harder than I actually have to at this point. As you get to a certain level in your training, maybe you don't have to train so hard anymore. Maybe.
yeah. You've
You have
said
to
that.
see.
Yeah, you said there about training. You're not training as hard. You've mentioned there trying different things, and what happens when you're 80, and I'm sure there's 80-year-old
Yeah.
powerlifters out there, but within that 80-year period, they've probably done something else. They've probably done some different type of movement. A really good example, we've got a member in the gym at the minute. He is actually 80. He played football up until he was in his 60s, and he's only just started strength training. So he's had 60 years of doing something else, which the time, powerlifting is always going to be there. There's always going to be time to do that. Do you think actually, or what are your thoughts on people wanting to commit to a CrossFit community, a powerlifting community, and have that flag to wave of, I'm a powerlifter, I'm a CrossFitter, can actually have uh, there's sometimes more cons to that, because it limits the options of what you can do outside of it, rather than just being, yeah, I'm going to do a powerlifting competition, but then I want to take a step away, and then I want to do X, Y, or Z, and then I want to try and plan that out a little bit. Do you think that can sometimes be a negative, rather than having that flexibility of just getting involved in fitness and strength training as a broader term?
Hmm. It probably could be entirely positive for some people. It probably could be a con for others. I think for me, it became an issue when it was my hobby, my social circle, and my career. So
Uh,
it's like every area of my life. A partner as well at one point. So
yeah,
it was just like all levels of life was powerlifting. The issue then was, lockdown, for example, here in Australia. Like my gym went out of business and we weren't allowed to go anywhere. So there was literally no powerlifting accessible for 20 months of my life. And that was, I got depressed from that.
yeah,
So I don't expect that to be taken. How can I say that? I don't know, but you hope that that wouldn't repeat itself, of course.
yeah,
Like the rug being swept away from you in the same way as COVID-19 did back then. But you never know, if it's injury for some people that can crush them when all facets of your life is just so. I don't want to say one dimensional, because I really believe that being part of a powerlifting community and being an athlete and doing those things is very multifaceted. So it's not in that way. But yeah, if you don't have access to it anymore for some reason, and you don't have anything else to replace it that gives you the same amount of joy, I think it can cause a lot of grief that might be really hard to handle.
Yeah, and I suppose just touching on COVID, obviously in the UK with all the gyms closed,
Mm.
there was a couple of lifters that actually had they used to train in their garage, so they had a lot of equipment, could still train. For a lot of them, well, they kind of struggled because they ended up training from other people in the gym, all doing powerlifting, to then just being by themselves, which they found quite hard. But then also the lifters that didn't have any equipment
Mm.
had to find something else. So a lot of my clients got into walking. A lot of them got into climbing because they could go outside and do that. And actually, it actually realizes that that I'm a big believer in everyone gets involved in training, whether it's powerlifting, CrossFit, tennis, swimming, because they enjoy it, and you keep doing that because you enjoy it, and all of the things that because what they found was, because they were really strong, they were good at doing other things that required strength, like climbing and those sorts of things, and thinking about that technique. How was your kind of, from the peak of competing in powerlifting to now? How was your kind of training changed? Because in international powerlifting competition, I can imagine pretty strict and know what you're doing, compared to now. Is it still kind of the same format that you use from the experience that you've got, or has it changed slightly?
Yeah. I'll add one thing to what you said before first. I think that people who are very, very interested in powerlifting and get to a point where they are quite specialized in that sense, like maybe say intermediate athletes and lifting 4 times a week, doing other things can be really good for your lifting as well. Not just that other things are, like you said, like maybe you're strong and that therefore it's easier to do other things, but it's the opposite. Like when I started swimming, my bench went up because finally my upper body is doing things it's not usually doing. And tennis is giving rotation from to my back, which is really nice because usually you're quite stuck when you're a powerlifter. So just something to consider, if you're listening and maybe you want to try something, it doesn't mean that it's going to negatively impact your lifting. It could be good for it as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's always that fear of, oh no, it's gonna impact my squat. Whereas actually, yeah, it could be sometimes a good thing. I might have to take up swimming. My bench is struggling, so I might have to take up swimming if you say that.
So in terms of my programming now, it's the difference is the exercises are pretty much the same, because it's like all the meat and potatoes of lifting that you want to do, and the sessions are just shorter. So I spend about an hour training tops, which means that instead of doing say like four or five sets of squats, which is what I would have done in the past, I'll be doing 1 or 2 sets of squats, and then I'll just smash out some leg press or something afterwards. So it's a little bit less volume in the SPD. And then I do a bit more um, just like hypertrophy work in other exercises that are faster and require less setup and less mental preparation.
Yeah. Okay,
Mm.
cool. And with that, has it been, because I know for like what I mentioned before about doing different things, I ended up dropping quite a lot a bit of weight by doing a little bit of more like cardio side of things. Did you in terms of your training, did it allow you to focus on things that maybe you didn't feel as though you had time to focus on? Like for me, it was, I was getting my steps in, but I was a little bit of a tangent, but fit for powerlifting. But compared to like doing other things, like going on a long walk or anything like that, I wasn't fit. I wasn't fit for that. I wasn't fit for, like, I did an obstacle course race a couple of months ago. I remember doing that a couple of years ago, and that was really tough. Whereas this year, not as heavy.
Yeah,
It
nice.
felt it felt yeah, it felt great, and it was fun. Did you have you found that as well, that it's allowed you to maybe focus on other areas that have maybe been put to the side for a little bit?
Hmm. I would say more time in my day to do other things, work and hobbies that aren't related to lifting. So just nice things that I like to do. And so I'm still running, which I enjoy very much. I find that a little bit hard to combine. If I went full powerlifting mode now, I don't think I would continue, at least not as much. I did a sumo session last week and then I went running the day after, and it just felt quite horrible, if I'm being honest. So
Yeah.
that back to back didn't really work. I'm maybe not trained enough yet. I mean, I might have to work on it a little bit. But you definitely like living here in Sydney, it's a very outdoorsy kind of lifestyle. We have beautiful weather most of the year, and like swimming, tennis, running is just very enjoyable in that sense. We have a lot of beautiful nature, beautiful parks, and the coastline where I live. So I enjoy that quite a lot, and I don't want to let it go. I think it's really good for my mental health as well to be more outdoors and do exercise outdoors. Um, I cry every time I run. I don't know what it is. It's just like emotional release of some sort. I find it very like cathartic. So yeah, there is more space to do those kind of things, which is nice.
Yeah, and as well, a couple of things that you've mentioned there. I think because even though I said that people get involved in training because they enjoy it, people get involved in powerlifting because they enjoy it, and it can be fun. I think sometimes it can be it's relative to what level you're at, but it can be quite intense,
Mhm.
sometimes, and doing things, like for me, going out for walks, doing outside things like the obstacle course. The other week we did a water obstacle course, which was pretty cool. I'd recommend doing one of those. It's sometimes like what you mentioned, it is that relief a little bit because there's no pressure. You know that, the likelihood of, apart from maybe a couple of bruises doing an obstacle course, the likelihood of something going wrong isn't very good. And you know that there's just going to be that good feeling at the end of it rather than, and I'm sure you've had this as well, or experienced this with people that you've worked with. If you have a bad session or don't hit the weight that you hit, it can ruin the rest of your day. Would you kind of
Yeah,
agree with that?
yeah, I can.
Yeah, so having that, I think having those different outlets are good to have.
Mm.
In terms of uh, competing in the future, in terms of getting back to that, is that something that you're looking at? Is that something that like it's on a bit of a back burner? Because I think you've shared a couple of things of kind of like your prep at the minute.
Yeah, I was gonna I was gonna post every day of my prep. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. That's the worst idea. So I'm not doing that. That's way
Yeah.
too much Instagram. But I am doing a competition on October 26th, and I'm super excited. I have not been this excited to compete in years. So it's really looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. This is an invitational kind of competition. So they've invited the top lifters in Australia. So it's called SPD Cup Australia. It has the same rules as the Sheffield and is also sponsored by SPD. So you get prize money, obviously not the same amount, but you do get money for each national record that you break, and then you get money if you win the total by percentage. So we'll be, I think, one a couple. I don't know. I don't actually know how many ladies have been invited, but I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah. Nice. And just on a little bit of a tangent on that, because I've been to Sheffield. I'm based in Leeds, so it's literally not even an hour away. Can you see more competitions having that format in terms of how much you beat it by percentage wise, and challenging to beat more records? Or what are your thoughts on Sheffield?
Um, well, it's an insane level of lifting. So obviously that in itself creates hype. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's incredible the display of performance, like the display of strength that you get to watch within one session. It's just, yeah, it's incredible. The way to win in itself, my math is not very good. I I find it a little bit difficult to understand who's in the lead. Do you struggle with that, or are you better than me for
No,
those?
I'm glad you said that because I had to look at they had like a chart and it gave you what the record was and how they went through because um obviously in a I don't know, a standard powerlifting competition, what would you call it? You can see obviously people's totals and they've got the list on, and if it gets to like the final deadlifts, you can see where they're going to go. Whereas in percentage, it's slightly different because obviously as well they're going to come out at different um they come out in different orders. Whereas you think, somebody who came out because it's all like the weight classes together. So I think I sussed it out, but I wasn't 100% sure on that to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that you have that incentive for breaking records is almost enough in itself to create hype around the um the event. I don't know. I'm just gonna try and lift as much as I can and hope that it's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of that thing of I related it. I had a conversation last week about a similar topic of powerlifting. Everybody wants to see records. Everyone wants to see that buzz because it does create an excitement in the wherever the competition is. And I kind of, whether it's a good example or a bad example of it's a little like watching UFC or boxing. Everybody wants to go see that because they want to see a knockout. They want to see some excitement. They want to see something happen. And like what I mentioned earlier of powerlifting, growing in popularity and exposure as well, especially for an event like Sheffield and at the top level, so people can see these lifters, is only a good thing. I think because it will have more interest in it. So yeah, it'll be cool to hear how you get on in October. I suppose from a lot of things that we've spoken about there, what kind of have been the lessons that you've learned from having that top level experience of competing, but then also having that time away from it, what's been like the pros and cons lessons that you've kind of taken away from your experience of powerlifting and training.
Hmm. I can talk probably a while about that. So I'll try and give you two answers only. One thing I find is that being really invested in my lifting, there is no greater way of getting to know myself than that. I think that's when I push boundaries within training, it's when I really push the knowledge of who I am, the thoughts that come up for me in these situations, my responses and my triggers and my feelings and my strengths and abilities, they come through. I get to see who I really am as a person in that moment, which is, probably the biggest joy that I've taken from it. When I've taken a step away and I've calmed down a little bit and I started doing more, this and that. I'm very happy and fulfilled, but I've lacked that sense of exploration in that
Okay.
same sense.
Yeah.
My dog is coming here. It's gonna be a bit loud.
Ah.
Um, the second thing that came to mind the other day as a lesson that I've learned, and it was a bit of a realization, almost like a bit of a cold shower when it hit me, and it's that the only reason that I haven't been experiencing that much struggle lately is because I haven't been trying.
Yeah.
And it's that acceptance that when things are hard, it's because you're trying to do something. And
Yeah.
if it's not hard, you're like, what are you doing? Why is it so easy? Is that what you want? And getting along with the idea that things are gonna create some anxiety. I got a lot of anxiety getting on this podcast because I find it very, I get very nervous about things that are going to get published and talking about things. So it would have been more pleasant to cancel it. But what would I have been able to take from that, you know? So I think those would be the two big lessons that these many years of lifting have taught me. I don't know if that answered your question, if that was your
Yeah.
question even.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you didn't cancel, and I hope I hope you're enjoying the
Yes,
episode.
it's fine now.
And good. And I think I think because seeing when people uh, social media is the all seeing eye of everything, and I think a lot of people just get involved in training, in powerlifting, whatever strength training they're doing or whatever they're doing in there. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of people posting things about their training, what they should be doing, and I think speaking to yourself, who has experienced different uh, things within powerlifting, within competing, within coaching, within, taking a step away, experiencing different things outside of powerlifting, like you mentioned, we swimming, tennis, and CrossFit for a couple of weeks. I think it's useful for people to hear that, look, it isn't just a case of, yeah, um go in and do sessions, and then you just put weight on the bar, and then all of a sudden within a year you become the elite level athlete that you are. I think it's good to know how much commitment does it take, how much does it actually take out of you to be able to do that. And one thing that I've spoken to a lot of people getting involved in powerlifting with is that at one point there was a lot of junior uh, powerlifters who had done really well on the world stage, but then had maybe fallen out of love with powerlifting. Maybe they didn't get into the opens and didn't want to continue it, which is, you know, I always wonder, well, I wonder what they're doing now.
Hmm.
How are they getting on with that? Because going back to what we said at the start, people get involved in training because they enjoy it. And, yes, there's levels of how much it needs to be taken seriously, but like what you said about how is training going to feel when you're 80, it should be something that is like a long-term thing, because it's like food. You're going to eat every day. So training, movement, you're going to do that every day. So it's just trying to find that balance. Really, really appreciated you taking the time to jump on, Isabella. Really, really was looking forward to chatting to you when we got this booked in. But for everyone listening, and for everything that we've spoken about today, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom for everyone listening?
Wow, put me on the spot. Figure out yourself. Don't think that you have to do things a certain way because that's the norm or because someone has told you that you have to do things a certain way. Allow yourself to get to know yourself, know what your priorities are, what your values are, what's meaningful to you, and follow that.
Yeah.
And know that it will be hard, and that's something you gotta like that it's hard. That's something you need to learn to enjoy, and you need to learn to enjoy the fact that it's going to take time.
Yeah. Uh, you said I put you on the spot. That was a really good answer to finish on. I think that that's some really good take home points for people listening. And like I say, really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on. If anyone has any questions about what we've chatted about today, or if people wanted to see the content that you put out there, where could people find you?
Easiest would be Instagram. My full name is Isabella von Weissenberg. And in my profile, my email is linked. So you can always send me an email or a DM. And yeah, you're welcome
Awesome.
to.
Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on today. Like I say, really, really appreciated it and really enjoyed chatting with you today. thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Bye.